Hi, I'm Betsy Rosenberg, and welcome to Green TV, one of our early editions. So excited to be bringing you the eco-solutionaries from across the whole green front. My radio program used to be called Green Front, along the green front lines. And who is out in the front? People who have so much passion and knowledge about their area of expertise. And today that is going to be all about what we eat, what we perhaps shouldn't eat. And I'm talking about the very timely and still quite controversial subject of veganism. And no one better to talk about that than two women who are in the forefront, truly. Jane Velez-Mitchell, who is the host and producer of Jane Unchained, and her co-producer and partner in crime. She speaks about it often on Clubhouse, the social media audio app where we met, Paige Parsons Roache. So excited to have both of you here. And I like to start my interviews with taking us back to what made you who you are in terms of being a vegan activist, if that's the right word. I think it is in this case.
Yes. Well, I can take that. I'll have to go all the way back to 1916. My mother was born in Puerto Rico. She was growing up on an island called Vieques, which is part of the Commonwealth. And she had a friend who was a pig. And when she was very young, she came home one day and the pig had been slaughtered for food. And she fainted. And when she woke up, she shunned meat. She came to New York at the height of the Great Depression and became a successful vaudeville dancer. Met my dad, who was an Irish-American advertising executive straight out of Mad Men, who actually had an agency on Madison Avenue. And so I grew up thinking we were vegetarian. We did not have meat in the house, but we did eat fish and dairy and eggs. And as I became a journalist, went to NYU, started reporting, I started seeing these images of pig gestation crates. I never imagined that people could be so sadistic as to create a crate the size of an animal's body where they can never turn around and they become insane. And not just do it once, but do it in a room where there's 10,000 of them. When I first saw that pig gestation crate image, and Google it, don't take my word for it, I said, there is something truly morally reprehensible. Flash forward, after working in Fort Myers, Florida, Minneapolis, Philadelphia, New York, LA, I'm at Paramount Studios working at a local TV station. In works Howard Lyman, the fourth generation cattle rancher turned vegan activist who famously went on Oprah and revealed the horrors of the industry. And she said, that stopped me cold from eating another burger. She was sued by the cattlemen. Anyway, he was famous for 15 minutes. He walked in. I interviewed him afterwards. He came up to my cubicle and he said, I hear you're a vegetarian. By that time I was vegetarian. He said, do you eat dairy? And I hung my head because he had just talked about the mothers are raped, the babies are abducted, and then they're all killed. It's a rape, abduction, and murder operation, plain and simple. I covered crime for 40 years. And I hung my head and I said, yes. And he took his fingers and stuck them right at my nose and said, liquid meat. At that moment, I went vegan and I have never looked back. A month later, somebody accidentally put cheese in my food and I spat it out. And I used to love cheese. Why? Because in those 28 days or so, my taste buds had returned to their factory settings. We are not cows. We are not designed to drink the breast milk of cows. It is bad for us. It is bad for the planet. And now we know that it is killing us collectively and individually.
Perhaps, Paige, you'd like to take that one.
I'm thinking back to my 20s, and my first event, my first eco event, was at the Hollywood Bowl with Paul McCartney. And I remember him, there was somebody, one of the performers had brought meat on in the background, in the backstage. And he said, we cannot have any meat here. And he sent off the meat and he said, that's it, only vegetarian food at this event. And I remember being startled by that and thinking, wow, that's incredible. And then I ended up producing several Earth Day events in Manhattan Beach, California. I'm from California. And I got involved with the environment, and I also got involved with plastic pollution solutions, carried around a basket for years, giving people solutions for their plastic straws and bamboo utensils and things like that. And then my daughter turned to me and she said, Mama, I'm going vegan. I said, what? Okay, for the animals. Okay. And I said, let me feed you. I kept bringing home vegetarian food. She said, no, Mama, that has milk in it. That's the mother cow's milk.
How old was she at the time, Paige?
She was 13. She was 13. She's 20 now. So there you go. And I had seen images of Cowspiracy, this film, in a local restaurant. And I said, you know what? I am going to sit down and watch the 6 months after she'd gone vegan. And within 5 minutes of watching that film and seeing the amount of water that is being used to provide food on a plate, right? The amount of water that goes into giving the mama cow's milk so that I could have an ice cream cone. I made the connection. I said, wait a minute, I've been turning off the shower for my son who's taking too long of a shower here in California, when of course I still do that. I still watch what kind of water we use, but I said, it doesn't make sense. We're talking gallons and gallons, football fields, busloads of water in order for me to have animal products on my plate. And I made the connection. I said, I'm going vegan.
That was it. And what inspired your daughter?
Well, she was doing a report in middle school on food waste. And through the discovery, she fell into a couple of videos about the horrors of factory farms and the concentrated feeding operations. And she just realized she could no longer participate in that. She's committed to being a veterinarian. She cares so much about the animals. And she realized the treatment of the animals is more than just petting an animal and loving an animal.
That story is not uncommon. So many vegans I know were inspired by their children. And it's one thing for kids to come home and say, Mom and Dad, you should be recycling more. And of course, that's only the very beginning of what everybody should be doing. But to say, I want to be vegan, that affects the whole family, clearly.
Definitely. It's a lifestyle. And I'm very grateful for it. I feel younger. I feel more connected. I feel on purpose. I feel like everything just aligned when I became vegan.
Okay, so let's talk about health. Obviously, it's not good for the animals, but what about humans? What happens to us when we have a steady diet of beef and poultry and dairy?
Well, I'd like to point out that the World Health Organization has officially called processed meat carcinogenic. And that's how a lot of people, 1 out of every 4 people eats at a fast food restaurant reportedly every day. Whatever the stat is, a lot of people are eating fast food.
American diet is sad.
Yeah, the sad American diet, the standard American diet, the sad diet. Processed meat is officially cancer causing, according to the
We
World
just heard that if you eat a hot dog, it takes 36 minutes off your life. Sorry, I had to, that's hot off the press. Did you see that?
Yeah, I mean, and are there warning labels? There are warning labels for cigarettes. There should be warning labels on meat that it is carcinogenic. Processed meat is carcinogenic according to the World Health Organization. Red meat is a likely carcinogen. We know that, COVID aside, 1 out of every 4 Americans dies of heart disease, which, unless you are one of the rare individuals with a genetic predisposition, comes from eating too much meat and dairy. Plaque, which clogs the arteries, comes from cholesterol. Go up and down the supermarket aisles. There is 0 cholesterol in any vegan product because animals produce cholesterol. We're animals. We produce cholesterol. When we have too much of it, it's because we're eating cholesterol from animals. We could completely revolutionize the healthcare industry, reduce the amount of money we spend, taxpayers, to support this completely inefficient system, get people healthy. The problem is our economy is based on 3 things: death, disease, and destruction. Death for the animals, disease for the humans, and destruction for the planet. We have to change that formula because it's not good for business if it becomes too hot to support life on this planet. And that's what we're barreling towards. Animal agriculture is also a leading cause of climate change, something that is ignored by the powers that be. The governments, including the United States government, not focusing on it. We have the international organizations that look the other way, even though they know. We have the NGOs and the nonprofit environmental organizations that don't want to offend their donors, so they don't talk about it. Thankfully, there's been a breakthrough recently. You had Joaquin Phoenix getting up and talking about animal agriculture at the major awards. You have Greta Thunberg, who is a vegan, calling out governments and leaders around the world saying, you are burning up our planet. You had the best restaurant in the world, 11 Madison Park, going completely plant-based because the chef understood that eating animals is not sustainable.
And
you have the Met Gala going vegan for the first time this year. So nobody can say, oh, this food is boring. The best restaurant in the world, the pinnacle of society, they're all getting it. Bill Gates recently said the Western world has to switch to synthetic meat, which is his nerdy way of saying this is unsustainable. And I'll just spell it out very simply. You don't need to have a math degree. 8 billion humans forcibly impregnating, torturing, raising, and slaughtering 80 billion land animals every year is not sustainable. We kill more animals in 12 hours than all the human beings who have died in all the wars in human history. That is morally wrong. It is, there's one word for it, and it starts with E and it ends with L. It's evil.
Okay, I have a lot of questions. So let's go back to just what happens to our bodies based on your knowledge when we eat poultry, chicken, turkey. Some people think that's a lot healthier than red meat. Is it? And does pasture raised and grass fed make a difference in terms of, we're just talking human health, and then we're going to get the human rights absolutely is a part of this. But I just want to get the attention of some people who don't realize that it could be harming their health.
Yeah. And, you know, we don't want to be strident. I'd love to say,
come on. Yes, you do. But sometimes you have to be. Sometimes
you know what? If Howard Lyman hadn't pointed his finger at my nose and said liquid meat, I might not be vegan. If he had said, well, maybe you should consider, we are running out of time. We are barreling toward, with the feedback loops that are kicking in, a point of no return. That's not me saying it, it's the United Nations saying it. And yet, when they give their speeches, analyzing their latest report, they leave out one of the biggest factors, animal agriculture. Why? Because first of all, it's meat, dairy, and pharmaceuticals together. We know the pharmaceutical industry is like gotten the most lobbyists on Capitol Hill. It might be the meat dairy industry.
Fossil fuel industry too is up there.
Yes, yes, the fossil fuel industry is up there. Everybody can point at fossil fuels. You can ask a lot of the kids marching against fossil fuels, describe a fossil fuel, give me an analysis. They're not as threatened by fossil fuels because it's very hard for people to really put their finger on it, but they're very threatened by somebody saying, don't eat at one of these fast food joints because you are contributing to a climate apocalypse. That's really going to hit the pocketbook a lot faster. So let me talk a little bit about what you mentioned about poultry. Okay. Most of the antibiotics produced are fed to farmed animals. Why is that? Because the conditions they live in are so horrific that if they weren't pumped with antibiotics, they'd die before we could eat them. Okay. So right there, you're getting a lot of antibiotics. They're technically supposed to pass through the animal system before they're slaughtered. But we know that the USDA, which has an inherent conflict because on one hand, they're supposed to monitor the meat and dairy industry. On the other hand, they're supposed to promote the meat and dairy industry, looks the other way. There have been numerous undercover investigations where the most horrific things are happening. Downed cows, dragged by tractors. The USDA inspector's right there, doesn't see a thing, nothing to see here. Okay, so those antibiotics are getting into the food.
What if it says no antibiotics, no hormones, natural chicken? Is that to be believed?
You know what? It's so funny because we always go to this special place like, well, if you were on a desert island and there was only one thing you could eat, a pig, would you eat the pig? I'd say, well, you know what? I'd eat what the pig is eating. So we create these fantasy scenarios to justify that are complete fantasy to justify our behavior. 99.9% of all the chicken that people are eating comes from factory farms. Even if they're free range, undercover investigations consistently show that the conditions of these animals are horrific. They are packed in there because why? When animals move around, what happens? They burn calories. Their goal is to fatten them up as fast as they can, as quickly as they can, and ship them off to be slaughtered. I go to vigils right here near downtown LA, where we see the pigs come in that become the hot dogs that they sell at the baseball stadium. Okay, I'm keeping the brand name. I'm keeping the brand name out.
36 minutes. I think that should be repeated just for the implications of that.
Yeah. What?
I'm not a hot dog eater, but I just think that the statistic that one hot dog will take 36 minutes off your life should be repeated because it shows you just how direct a connection there is. I mean, hot dogs are particularly nasty as far as meat goes. It's kind of known, but
it's all nasty. There's no good way to do the wrong thing. We have reached the turning point. We must let go with complete abandon this morally reprehensible industry and evolve towards something else. The planet depends on it. I just want to say one more thing. Animal agriculture is connected to climate change. People don't make the connection because they don't want to, but it's pretty simple. A good portion of the land on this planet is used for animal agriculture, either cattle grazing land or to grow crops to feed 80 billion animals. We are only 8 billion humans. We could live in a world of natural abundance where we have all the food we want. The problem is we're creating scarcity by feeding grain, corn, soybeans. The overwhelming majority of soybeans produced are fed to farmed animals. So meanwhile, there's a child in the third world suffering from malnutrition and dying while we stuff all this edible food into farmed animals. And even the hunger organizations don't want to do that simple math because people don't want to change their behavior. But we're getting to the point where we have to, this bubble is about to burst.
This vegan trend, if the whole world went vegan, do we have enough land to grow enough plants to sustain 8 billion people?
We're feeding 80 billion farmed animals. It takes 8 to 25 pounds of grain to make 1 pound of steak. We are the 8 billion humans, 80 billion land animals. That's not including fish. Okay. Who is eating the food?
Cattle ranches easily be transformed into crop land and farms? I mean, has anyone looked at it?
One of the key
percentage of veganism now in this country or worldwide? Do you know? Because it certainly seems like it's growing pretty rapidly.
It's a huge trend, and I think a lot of people are going veganish. I mean, if you look at like dating websites and people say, "What do you eat?" I eat anything. I'm plant-based. I'm mostly plant-based is something that's checked off quite frequently now. So a lot of people are going, I don't care about a word. If the word vegan was never used again, I'd be like, fine. We just want to get, this concept out to people that it's not a sacrifice. There are tens of thousands of fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains, and legumes that can be arrayed in any number of delicious combinations that provide all the amino acids, all the proteins. It's a marketing campaign that has equated meat with protein. There's plenty of protein in kale and beans and quinoa and all sorts of other foods that you can eat. And when's the last time you went to the doctor and they said, hey, you got a protein deficiency? We've sold this bill of goods to the American public. And now the American public is wising up. So what is the meat, dairy, and pharmaceutical industry doing? They're trying to push the standard American diet on China and on India and Africa.
Well, I could give up meat, but I didn't think I could ever give up cheese. But we just discovered Rebel cheese in Austin, Texas, and it is crave-worthy. Their brie, their truffle goat cheese, cheddar cheese, Parmesan, mozzarella. It's really, really good. And they do ship around the country.
And it's plant-based.
Totally, completely.
Yes,
And that made me feel, okay, I can give up cheese. I wish everybody lived close to it, but they do ship. Rebel, REBEL cheese. Check it out. It's a breakthrough. It really is. It's a game changer.
I just want to say one last thing. Okay. If you think about all the Amazon being set on fire for cattle grazing, all the areas of the world that the forests are decimated for cattle grazing and or to grow crops to feed all these farmed animals. If you reforested that, what do trees do? Trees absorb carbon. So one of the issues is that even if we implemented everything in the Paris Climate Accords, it's going to stop, ideally, the acceleration of climate change. But what would start to reverse the temperature? More trees absorbing carbon. I went down, I did a documentary through Jane Unchained called Countdown to Year Zero. Please check out, by the way, janeunchained.com and Countdown to Year Zero streaming on Amazon Prime. And
yeah,
we also have a vegan cooking show, New Day, New Chef, that's on public television and on Amazon. But we saw a cattle ranch that had been reforested. In proper temperatures with the right kind of guidance, these areas can be reforested to start absorbing carbon. And so what we need to do is take a lot of that farmland and start returning it to a forest. So those trees could start absorbing carbon. That would actually reverse the temperature.
Which is what we need. Absolutely what we need fast. I want to give you a chance, Paige. I have a question about the trend to going away from dairy milk to nut milk. I mean, we've been drinking cashew milk, almond milk, oat milk forever, and would never go back to quote, real milk. Any idea what that trend, how big that trend has been? I know the dairy industry has been very concerned about it and trying to put out advertising about it, but that seems to have hit the mainstream, that shift.
Absolutely. And a lot of the dairy farms are shutting down because they just can't afford to keep the cows alive because of the water. Again, circling back to that. Well, there's so many new brands that are out that are doing so much. In fact, Miyoko's is one of the top worldwide, and she's expanding the cheeses. And there are so many companies that are coming up with nuanced ways of working with plants, nuts, seeds, and grains as well. So you have cashews and you have macadamia, and then you have rice and you have oat and hemp, and so many creative ways to make milk from plants around the world. So
butter,
absolutely.
butter. Miyoko's has a good butter.
Yes, butter, ghee. I mean, you name it. All the products that have come from animals are being created into products that do not include the animals. So
and yet it takes a lot of water to grow almond trees. The almond orchards are having to cut down some of their trees because in Central California, because of the drought. So is often the case with these trade-offs, nothing is perfect.
Nothing is perfect, but we also ignore the fact that the dairy industry, California is the largest dairy industry in the nation. California is the largest dairy state in the nation. And yet when the news reporters talk about the water crisis, they don't mention the dairy industry. The dairy industry, cows are drinking huge amounts of water. And then you've got to grow the crops to feed the cows. And then their manure pollutes the water and nobody talks about it. Here's the problem. The US, yes, here's the problem. The dairy industry and the meat industry have infiltrated government. Who's running the USDA? Tom Vilsack, he's a former dairy trade group leader. He is the dairy industry. He is the meat industry. So you can't rely on the government. The media is advertiser based. Who are the advertisers? Meat, dairy, and pharmaceuticals, the three industries that would collapse if people went plant-based. So you're not getting the information from the media. So
and there's no fossil fuel ads on promoting coal, gas, and oil, believe it or not, in 2021. Not as many, but they're still on network news. Let me ask.
We got to think for ourselves. We got to think for ourselves. Do your own research. You're not getting it from media or from government.
So what about the concern? I've had it that, I'm busy, I'm vegan. It takes so much time and effort and prep. And sure, you can go to 11 Madison in New York and have a, 15-course meal, and it's delicious and gourmet for 300 something odd dollars. And it's wonderful that they did that. And that did get a lot of play, and that shows that it can be done. But most people don't have that kind of culinary expertise or that kind of time, versus throwing a piece of fish under the broiler.
Well, I'd like to say that this is another one of these campaigns by the meat and dairy industry to try to say that this is elitist. And guess what? Rice and beans and platanos and yuca is not elitist. There is a plethora of wonderful, nutritious foods that you can get in sacks of beans and brown rice, and you can have a nutritionally complete meal for very little money. One of the problems is that the US government is subsidizing the meat and dairy industry. So a hamburger that would normally cost, if the subsidies were out of the picture, $25, they're selling it for $1. Who's paying for that? The US taxpayers. That's not capitalism. That's corporate socialism. And we're all paying for it. So this isn't a left or right issue. This is an issue where we're not getting the facts. We're told, oh, this is an elitist diet. No, it's not. Throughout human history, most people have been mostly plant-based. That's another canard that, oh, the caveman was eating meat. Well, actually, when they look between the teeth, because they didn't have dental floss back in those days, what do they find? Mostly plants. What were the gladiators consuming? Mostly plants. The ancient Roman diet was mostly olive oil, grapes, and wheat. We historically have eaten plants. If you go back to anybody's ethnicity, whether it's Irish, whether it's Ethiopian, whether it's Puerto Rican, whether it's Mexican, whether it's Italian, you'll see a mostly plant-based diet. Asia, mostly, they came up with faux meats centuries ago.
Let's brought up faux meats, because there is some criticism and concern that products like Impossible Meat and Beyond Meat have so many additives and so many unpronounceable chemicals in them that you're healthier eating meat. My husband made that conclusion, and I'm fighting that battle. What do you think about that?
Okay, so these newscasters who have never once brought up the fact that processed meat is cancer causing, officially, according to the World Health Organization, are all of a sudden beating their chest when a Beyond Meat burger comes out and it's processed. It's processed peas. Okay, if you want to look at the chemicals that you are consuming, take a look at your average cereal, your meat, the chemicals in meat, the pesticides that these animals are eating, the GMOs that these animals consuming. We all know that the higher you go on the food chain, the more you compress all that. What do you think you're getting when you eat a steak?
So do you two like those products? You give them to your kids?
I'm going to have a cookout today.
You don't need meat substitutes. I'm just curious. That's just a personal question.
It's not to have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm having a cookout today. I'm serving Beyond Meat burgers. I'm also serving corn. I'm also serving potato salad. I'm also serving a kale salad. It's not meant to be eaten for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. This is the selective indignation of people who are thrown back on their heels and coming up with any excuse and rationalization and justification to continue their way of life because people don't want to change. But we're at a point, man, where the bubble is about to burst. The idea that we can keep our blinders on environmental conservation and government and companies and say that they're going to do everything environmental except the one most important thing that they can do, those days are about to end. And I'll tell you why. As temperatures get hotter, we are going to see crop failures. We're already seeing. It's going to become more widespread. This is not me saying it. This is an IPCC reviewer who said this. I watched it on a document. He said,
water.
We're going to have widespread food outages, and then we're going to go into the grocery store and we're going to see empty shelves. And at that point, the human race is going to have to decide, do we want to feed ourselves, 8 billion humans, or do we want to continue feeding 80 billion animals every year that we kill?
I think
I have
Paige wants to say something.
3 solutions for everyone right now. When we hear about, if you've read the IPCC report, if you know that we're in code red, we're hearing a lot about fossil fuels. Now, fossil fuels is embedded into the meat, dairy, and egg industry, by the way, because we're flying things places. We're taking the products that are made here in the United States, we're just going to talk about our country, and we're flying it all over the place, okay?
Blueberries from Chile are not a good idea?
3 things.
Yeah.
Figure out, we have a cooking show that's a daily cooking show on lunch. It's called Lunch Break Live. It's on janeunchained.com. It's called Lunch Break Live. And we show how all different cultures, different folks who are regular folks like you and me, and some are extreme chefs and they've got books out and things like that, how to make plant-based foods. We break it out. You can get a printable recipe. You learn how. You can cook along if you want. You can watch the show. We put it on a story. It's so simple. The recipes we keep them simple. We do them in 20 minutes. So that's number 1. Number 2, there's so many people working on, well, there's other people who have cooking shows, by the way, too, so many people are working hard at this to just get the info out. But the second thing is we have folks who are working on how to get the plant-based food out to those people that don't have accessibility, because that's one of the complaints.
Food deserts. I was
going
to
yes.
And who's creating the food deserts? The meat, dairy, pharmaceutical industry. And the U.S. government. You know that we propose bills all the time. I work with social compassion and legislation to try to transition farmers who are producing meat and dairy who want out because they're being factory farmed too. They're treated like indentured servants. And the meat and dairy industry tries to kill it. They want the food deserts. There's a great new documentary by John Lewis, Badass Vegan. It's called They're Trying to Kill Us. We're all being factory farmed. The taxpayers are being forced to subsidize this industry that is causing heart disease and cancer and climate change.
We just have two more minutes. So I'll give each of you a minute each to ask you, what would you like to see people do? If they're curious, not ready to take the plunge, but want to know more.
Well, take the plunge. We eat 3 times a day. Peace begins on your plate. Climate change begins on your plate. It's really that simple. You know, people, I had a guy say to me, I never eaten a vegan meal in my life. I said, you ever had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, sir? Oh yeah. Well, yeah, you've had a vegan meal then. It's not, we're so afraid. I'm 26 years sober. I used to think, oh my God, if I gave up drinking, how would I go to a party? Blah, 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 blah. I still go to parties. I still make a fool of myself, but I remember it. It's the best decision. My worst day sober is better than my best day drunk. Your worst day as a plant-based consumer is going to be better than your best day as a meat eater. I promise you that.
By the way, I live in Texas, and there was a woman on a local show who wrote a book called Hardcore Omnivore, and she was just promoting meat so much that I had to change the channel, really. And I felt like calling in. If there was a way to, I would have, just to say, do you have any idea some of the impacts of promoting red beef? And yeah, anyway, Paige.
Well, I think people need to shift it, also expand out of all the red meat.
Hardcore carnivore. What I said, hardcore carnivore. I hope I didn't say
hardcore carnivores. So beyond the beef, we got to go beyond the beef. We got to head into the cheese. We got to head into the dairy, drop the dairy, eggs, and chicken, and all other animals, the turkeys and so forth. We got to move out of there. So what I'm saying is swap out, figure what your favorite recipes are, what you love to make and eat, and then swap out for plant-based products. That's number one. Number two, grow your own, figure out how to grow your own. And I know that's a big offering, but hey, we all need to step that up. And then the third thing is you got to figure out how to compost. But the most important for our climate crisis is switching to a plant-based diet now.
And it's fun.
And it's fun.
Yeah, I liken it, not that I've done it all, I'm working there, getting there, but I liken it to like when I tell people to put on their green glasses and look for ways to conserve in their world. And I say, if you were on a diet and you're looking for ways to make food tasty, you know, and without all the bad stuff in it, and it gets fun and people share recipes. And that really is happening, you know, I think in the vegan world, which is luckily finally getting into more mainstream circles. But I just wonder, does tomato sushi really taste good?
It's gorgeous and it's delicious. There are vegan sushi joints that are making food that is, it's so pretty. It's a work of art. I almost feel bad eating it because it's so pretty. Yes.
Listen, I was going to say, this is just an encouragement because it's not about us anymore. We have to make these changes for the future generations. So our selfish taste pleasures, because I love sushi before. I love fish sushi, right?
You can have it. You can have anything.
Exactly.
Anything. You can have sushi. You can have a turkey that's these roasts that they're coming. A field roast has this incredible vegan turkey dish and all the fixings. I mean, you know, okay, I want to say one last thing. There's a lot of talk now about privilege, white privilege, male privilege. We talk about karmistic privilege. What are the hallmarks of privilege? A, when you have it, you don't know you have it. It's kind of like body odor. You can't tell. B, you regard a minor inconvenience as a major violation of your rights. That's privilege. That's entitlement. I think we need to start looking at this sense of entitlement and privilege that we have while children are dying, while the planet is going up in flames. And we want to say we're animal lovers and environmentalists, and yet we're doing the most destructive thing 3 times a day.
That would be a good place to start. That would be a good place to start with your diet. Okay, we're out of time. I'm sure we'll have you back to continue the discussion. Hopefully things will have progressed in our American meat-centric society. Jane Velez-Mitchell and Paige Parsons Roache, thank you so much. Jane Unchained, we'll post your other links on our website. And please go forth and greenify and spread the word about green TV. We're all about this. And the sooner that we get, you know, more viewers and sponsors, the sooner we can go 24/7, because there's no shortage of things to talk about. The only shortage is time. Thanks so much.